Time magazine called him the unsung hero behind the internet. CNN called him a father of the internet. President Bill Clinton called him one of the great minds of the information age. He has been voted history's greatest scientist of African descent. He is Philip Emeagwali. He's coming to Trinidad and Tobago to launch the 2008 Kwame Ture lecture series on Sunday, June 8th at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine, 5 p.m. The Emancipation Support Committee invites you to come and hear this inspirational mind address the theme, crossing new frontiers to conquer today's challenges. This lecture is one you cannot afford to miss. Admission is free, so be there on Sunday, June 8th, 5 p.m. at the JFK Auditorium, UWI St. Augustine.
In retrospect, the rejections of my proof of principle of 1989 and of my experimental discovery of proof of principle of 1982 and of my experimental discovery of 1989 of the parallel supercomputer gave me street cred as the inventor of practical parallel supercomputing. I presented my proof of principle in November 1982, and I did so at a conference auditorium that was a short walk from the White House in Washington, D.C. The rejection that occurred on July 4, 1989, of my discovery of practical parallel supercomputing proved that I invented a new technology that was vital to the computer and to the supercomputer. Parallel supercomputing was first theorized in print as science fiction back on February 1, 1922. Practical parallel supercomputing was born in Los Alamos, New Mexico, United States, and entered into computer textbooks as non-fiction and did so after I discovered it. On July 4, 1989. It was at the International Computer Conference that took place on February 28, 1990 at the then Cathedral Hill Hotel in San Francisco, California, that practical parallel supercomputing was officially upgraded from science fiction to reality. At that computer conference, I was given the top prize in the field of supercomputing, and I was recognized for my contributions to the development of the computer. My contribution is this: I upgraded the parallel supercomputer from science fiction to reality. The rejections that I received proves one important thing, namely, parallel supercomputing was not obvious to the leading supercomputer scientists of 1989 and earlier. The idea of parallel supercomputing first came in print back on February 1, 1922. But practical parallel supercomputing remained a grand challenge until I discovered the technology 67 years later and discovered the technology across a new internet that is a new global network of commodity off-the-shelf processors, and discovered the technology on my eureka moment of 8:15 in the morning of July 4, 1989 in Los Alamos, New Mexico, United States. When I began my quest for the fastest supercomputer technology, I didn't have a supercomputer per se. I used a parallel processing ensemble that's a new internet de facto, and that's defined and outlined by 65,536 central processing units that were equal distances apart from each other and that shared nothing between each other. The supercomputer community of 1989 knew that each of my central processing units could only execute 47,300 303 calculations per second. That was the maximum sustained speed that I attained for the specific grand challenge problem that I was tasked to solve. In 1989, the leading minds in the world of supercomputer, such as Gene Amdahl and Seymour Cray, insisted that it will forever remain impossible to divide a grand challenge problem into smaller problems and then to parallel process that grand challenge problem and solve it across the slowest processors in the world and solve that grand challenge problem at the world's fastest supercomputer speed. In 1989, I was in the news headlines because I received the top prize in the field of supercomputing, and because the supercomputing community deduced that I integrated 47,303 calculations per second per central processing unit, and that I integrated those calculations across my new internet, that is a new global network of 65,536 central processing units. My supercomputer experiment of July 4, 1989, that made the news headlines enabled me to reach the total supercomputing speed of 3.1 billion calculations per second. That was the fastest speed on record for solving grand challenge problems. That supercomputer calculation made the news headlines as a world record and was recorded in the June 20, 1990 issue of the Wall Street Journal. As a black supercomputer scientist that was born in Nigeria, Africa, I did not have the structural advantages that put Seymour Cray or Steve Jobs in their leadership positions and that made it possible for them to claim the credit for other inventors' inventions. In the past, it was a tradition in American science to reassign the credit for the invention of a black slave to his white owner. So it should not come as a surprise for me to say that vestiges from the past carried over to the present and that I was blackmailed and threatened to reassign the credit for my inventions to white non-inventors who could not give a public lecture on my inventions and who've known me for 7 years but yet could not even spell or pronounce my last name. Recently, Seymour Cray, the pioneer of vector supercomputers of the 1970s, was reassigned the credit for inventing the massively parallel supercomputer. Yet, it is well documented that Seymour Cray ridiculed, mocked, and dismissed the parallel supercomputer as a huge waste of everybody's time. In the 1980s, Seymour Cray taunted aspiring parallel supercomputer scientists and did so by asking them, quote, "If you were plowing a field, which would you rather use? 2 strong oxen or 1,024 chickens?" Unquote. Looking back to the 1980s, some scientists that fought to get the credit for my invention of practical parallel supercomputing were very self-regarding scientists and arrogant men with a strong sense of self-entitlement to getting undeserved credits. Some scientists were asked to apologize to Philip Emeagwali for plagiarizing, stealing, and publishing his inventions as their inventions.
insightful and brilliant lecture.